Well, I could sing Magic Rachel again.
We'll do that after. People can stick around. Give them something to look forward to. For now, we are going to get started. I'm Stephanie with the Women of AR. We are having a debriefing of the 2022 Fig Adventure Race. It was a 12-hour race down in the Red River Gorge. And I am very pleased that we have joining and leading the discussion today the two women from team the Wildlings who won their division and were 5th overall.
By
Rachel
30
Furman.
seconds.
By what?
30 seconds.
You were
Eric
30 seconds out of 4.
Eric Olson saw us coming, and I don't know what happened. They got some serious afterburners because they were on the side of the road, like fiddling with something. And they're like, oh, they're like, and he said later, I knew you two quite possibly had the same amount of points as we did, and they just dropped.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Oh, I got, yeah.
I mean, I assumed they were ahead of us, so I wasn't too bothered when they zoomed by, but
Wow. If you had known.
exactly. Whatever.
You probably
I
still
didn't.
couldn't have caught them. I saw Terry pushing him out of the last TA and she was having no nonsense. So her teammate Eric, of course, is dating my teammate Sarah. So they were all smoochy and wanting to, you know, talk to each other in the TA. And Terry's like, go, we don't have time for this. She's like, move it.
Furman and Rachel are on the course. Go.
We got people to catch. All right. So anyway, they're going to talk to us about the Fig this year, and I'll do just a little overview intro. So it's important to know that we were told to be at the start finish area at 5:30 a.m. for check-in. The race started at 7 a.m. What we didn't know is when we were going to get our maps. The instructions said that at 5:30, go pick up your swag bag, read your instructions carefully, all will be revealed. So everybody shows up at 5:30, hoping we're going to get our maps. We get our race instructions, no maps. And so we find out that we'll get our maps at 6:30. So we're all kind of like looking around like, great, we could have slept for another hour. And so I'm curious, first of all, and I'll pop up here what the race instructions looked like. And I'll say shout out to Mark Latanzi for having posted all of this on his Facebook page. So I didn't have to go in and try to scan or take pictures of all this. So hopefully folks had a chance to look at that. But it was basically this one page of instructions. On the back side were UTMs and checkpoint clues. So the first thing we did was read through the instructions. And I will let Barb and Rachel start off and tell us how you all spent your time then, knowing that you weren't going to get the maps until 6:30. What did you do?
Well, so do you have all the maps already up and want to show them, or just the one? Or
Is this before we get the maps, or what did we do when we got the maps? Is that what you're asking?
well, I was just basically, okay, so this is what we'd gotten. Yeah, okay. So I mean, really, we just because the points were pre-plotted, they were tiny on the map, so we spent some time finding them. But basically, yeah, just kind of found where all the checkpoints were, and then decided on a route between, you know, for the first trek. And then I guess that was all we could really do, right? Because we didn't have the other maps until we got to the TA. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first map
The other
we
map
got was
the other
this
stuff
one.
didn't make sense.
I know this was only a week ago, but a lot has happened.
Yeah, so when we got maps, the first map that we got was this one.
Correct.
You could see the
Yeah.
first leg. And then we also, you could see sort of this
Part of
leg,
that, yeah.
part of the next leg.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yep. So we knew, like, basically we were going to end up biking kind of the opposite direction past the start finish. So I think we just highlighted, you know, the route that we were going to take on trek. and then highlighted the road up to BDX and BDY, because I think we did have both of those available to us on the map that we received. And that was kind of it, to be honest. I mean, I will say I probably did not spend as much time as I should have actually looking at the trek section, because in my mind's eye, I saw the route very quickly to go from to 2 to 3 to 6 to 5 to 7 up to 1, and then to use the road to come down to 4. I honestly did not see that trail did not connect, and then really didn't even see that there was this lovely cliff band between 1 and the road until it was a little bit too late. And so then we just kind of had to take a gamble on that one. That didn't work out for us. But we did spend some time looking at 2 and how to get to it. Debated a little bit on the taking the trail around from the south, or if we wanted to try to attack it using the reentrant there at can't read that creek there. That yeah. So after a little bit of debate, we decided that was the reentrant was the easier way to go, or just the shorter way to go. So the plan was to attack it from that reentrant, hit the trail, and then take the trail up to 2.
Yeah. And so let's tell everybody, we're starting on foot. Right here's the start. We had staged our bikes the night before down here at TA1. And so we knew we were going to be making our way through the middle gorge to get to our bikes. And this is what we were given then. So the first choice you had to make was how you wanted to approach these points 1 through 8. And you can see there really are 3 different ways to approach it. You could have started at number 1, gone across the suspension bridge right here and gone into 1. And then there are a couple of different ways you could have gone the trail around. You can go up through Pincham Tight Gap right there. That's a fun little chimney climb, and around that way. Or you can take the trail all the way around, or you can do what Rachel and Barb did, which is go up Kings Branch, pick up the trail. Or you could do what Sarah and I did, which is we planned to go the creek up to here, but round about here, it started getting a little thicker along the creek, and it looked really clear on this hillside. So we thought, let's just go ahead and get up the hillside and make our way along the ridge top over to 2. And sort of, I had in my mind, had sort of pictured the trail getting to the top a lot earlier than it does. And so in my mind, I was sort of imagining we'll just scoot up to the ridge and we'll eventually run into the trail, and that's going to take us right to 2. And in that rush of all the people going down through there, and it's sort of the start of the race, I didn't stop before we left the creek and really look at the map and kind of appreciate the fact that this trail stays down along the creek for so long. So if you all have seen that picture of me laying under some rhododendron and crawling through stuff, that's all right through here. We got part way up this and it got so thick, so we got pushed over to here, and then we're trying to come up this, and I don't know how well you can see, but this is just like a band of cliff right here. So we were kind of trying to go up over that, and we're skirting under a cliff here, and it was the worst roto crawl ever. It took us like an hour and 45 minutes to get from the start to CP2. It was outrageously bad choice, and all we needed to do was stay in the creek until we got there. It was abysmal. So that was not a good start to the race for us. But in terms of strategy to approach this whole leg, I think that was definitely the winning strategy. You had to, if you had gone 1 first, obviously you're going so far east and then back so far west. Quite a few people, not knowing what this trek would be like along the creek, I know, went on along the road and down to the trails and all the way back. Some people I know, Ashton and her teammate, tried to take this little spur trail up And that's where some local knowledge helped. I knew that that spur trail went up to a climbing wall, so that, you know, that wasn't really a viable route. It would have been nice if it had been, but so yeah, I think you all definitely had the winning route and you executed it better than we did. And then from 2, there was some route choice from 2 to 3. Which way did you all go? Down and up, or did you go around this way?
So when looking at this prior to the race start, I think I thought we would go the northern route. But after coming up that trail and looking at it again, I realized that if we stayed south, it really didn't climb anymore much. You know, you kind of stayed along the ridge line, whereas if we dropped back down to the north, we would have dropped back down to the creek and then had to climb back up again. So that didn't make sense. So 2 to 3, we chose to stay, you know, along the trail, which beautiful sunset or sunrise coming up over the ridge. Like, it was just really, really pretty spot at that time of day. And then really enjoyed that section, just kind of that little trail run over to 3.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we left a couple of guys that I know who were probably a little faster than us on foot. They went the northerly route, we went the southerly route, and we beat them to number 3.
Yeah, we saw, so as we were coming up to 3, you know, there were a lot, it basically is an out and back then to go back to 6. And so I was anticipating it until I actually saw a couple of teams. I was like, wow, we must be pretty close to the front, because there were still some, like, there was like almost nobody until we got almost all the way to 3. And then we started seeing some teams, you know, hauling down the trail towards 6, or, you know, back to go towards 6. So unless somebody took different routes from 3 to 6, which I guess you could have now that I'm looking at it. But again, that trail was pretty flat, so it didn't really make sense to mess with a bunch of elevation.
Yeah, no, I agree. So then 6, 5 are pretty straightforward, and then 7. So one of the choices we made pretty early on, it was clear to me that we were not going to clear this course. They had described it as a pretty big course, and you know, once we saw how far northwest some of those trekking points were going to be, I knew we weren't going to clear this course. And so when I looked at this, number 1 was the obvious point for us to drop, because it was going to be either I had considered doing it as an out and back, or going out, and where I knew to get up from there is over here by Princess Arch. So we would have been going down and sort of further away in order to gain the top and come back. So, you know, either way, I figured that that was going to add probably, you know, 30 to 40 minutes maybe for that one point. So we decided to drop checkpoint 1 fairly early on.
Yeah, that probably would have been a smart choice.
Well, I mean, you all had every reason to think you all could clear this course. So
I don't know that I was thinking that far ahead. I think and Barb can chime in here too. I think what I tend to do is try to get stuff early and save some of my drops for later, just because I always have it in the back of my mind that maybe I'll be able to clear. And so I don't want to, like, you know, kind of shoot myself in the foot early, but that's not always the best strategy. I'll be frank about that. But anyway, I just didn't really think, you know, I didn't think to drop quite so early. And especially because, like I'd said, I kind of missed the fact that I wasn't going to be able to just do a really quick, you know, up to the road jaunt. So we did in fact go down to 7 first and then back up to 1. And I was, you know, kind of encouraged because I saw 2 teams doing the same thing we were doing, which was Mark Latanzi's team and MRA, Michigan Racing Addicts, who Barb knows well, obviously. And so we, you know, because I saw them doing the same thing, like coming back from 7 to go up towards 1, I kind of assumed then that there would have been, like, that there was going to be a way through. And to turns out they both found a way through, and we did not. So we bailed after a little bit of cliff finding, and then we just decided to go back down and around again, back right by 7 again, which was very demoralizing, but it's okay. It happens.
Yeah. I saw their route. They ended up coming up here past Half Moon Arch. So they
Yep.
were, did you talk to them about that route? They were probably doing some pretty
talked
sketchy
to
Barb
scrambling.
did, yeah.
I talked to MRA and they said they had to do a little bit of flat rock bouldering, but
Yeah.
when I'm looking at Mark's track on my other screen, and they found just a cut up, I think, and they were able to hop on that trail at Half Moon. And I want to go back to strategy. One thing is that the great thing about racing with Rachel is you go big or you go home. And I think that's great. I love it. I mean, because I'm a buzzer beater and I love that kind of work. And this was a navigational gamble. And when you want to go big, you got to be willing to gamble and then try and incorporate whatever adjustments you need to make into your plan. So and that was actually, it was Rachel's, mentioning that I was like, she's absolutely right. We made a big gamble to run with the big dogs. And I guess the good news is we lost 45 minutes and still did what we did. So, but
Yeah.
But it was, I'm glad we did it. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah. I mean, at least it was easy running on the trail. It wasn't like it was other than the climb up to try to get, past those cliffs, it really wasn't like physically demanding too much. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, we actually went right by, we actually crossed right back by the foot of the Half Moon Arch cliff.
Yeah.
And so those teams apparently had like gone just right there, but when we looked at it, it just looked impassable. So we didn't try, because at that point we'd already tried a couple other spots and we're like,
yeah,
kind of done with it. But anyway, so yeah, I think that in the rest of this particular trek was fairly straightforward then, just along the trail and everything. So, or just off the trail, nothing too terrible in terms of navigation. So
Yeah.
made it to TA1 and got our next maps.
Got on your bike.
Did you guys basically run like the whole thing? This is what I'm curious about as far as how that physicality goes and trying to be at the front of the pack.
We jogged, like Barb had the lovely experience of twisting both ankles right before CP2
at the same time.
So she was struggling a little bit, I think, until her ankles felt better. So we kind of, I call it the AR shuffle, adventure race shuffle. We weren't like running, but we were moving faster than a walk, for sure.
I think by the time we got past 4, we were starting to move, because I remember when we entered the trail on the west side of 8, we were moving pretty well, at least in my mind. Or is that when you put me in front? I didn't feel like I was like dying. Rachel can move on her feet, so that was a gift to have that.
Sarah and I saw you here as we were leaving to come back out. You all were coming north on this. We crossed, and I'll say you all were going fast enough that what I said to Sarah was, they've already gotten one. If they're moving that fast, they got number 1, and they're, they're basically almost caught back up to us, even having gotten number 1. So you were moving fast enough that I knew that you had.
I will say, I had a fun little spot a fun little moment getting 4. So if you want to zoom in just a slight bit to number 4, it's right off the road, right? So it looks like it's pretty simple. And it was, but like we were coming around that first corner where it turns to the left. Yeah, right there. And there were like a bunch of teams that were taking that first spur. See it? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There were like probably 4 teams going down there. And I knew it wasn't there. So I knew it was the next spur. So I kept going, or we kept going. But there was a 2-person male team, just like standing in the road. And the guy was like looking at his map and then looking over at all those teams in the woods. and then looking at his map, and then he looked back and he sees us like just kind of still jogging, right past him, and he kind of looks at me and he's like, "It's the next one, isn't it?" And I just smiled at him. and sure enough, we popped in and got it, and then as we were coming back out, they were coming into the woods to get it, and he was like, "It's that group think, it's that group think."
It's
I just
true.
thought that was really funny. He's like, "It's the next one, isn't it?" I'm like, yes.
Yeah, that's true. I'll say this, I want to point this out so I don't forget before the end of the session. One of the other reasons I think that we sort of had time to think about dropping one, Sarah and I ended up being able to strategize quite a bit. So when we got this initial set of instructions at 5:30, on the back of them was this down here on the left, all the UTM coordinates and the clues. So we didn't have maps, but we had these UTM coordinates.
Mhm.
So I had taken my box of old Red River Gorge maps. And so we spent that hour from 5:30 to 6:30 plotting all of these points. So
Oh,
we had all of the
Oh.
points plotted, and Latanzi did the same. I heard Latanzi had taken his map. So the race rule was no maps after the race starts, no outside maps after the race starts, which is a
I didn't know
fairly
that.
common rule. So
didn't even
always
think
make
about
sure
that.
you know whether outside maps are allowed or not. In this situation, it said no outside maps after the race starts.
Hmm.
So before the race started, as far as we were concerned, fair game. So we plotted all of these points before the race started. And then, we had to leave that map behind, but it gave us time to see where everything was, think about our routes, like this decision 2 to 3. We had time to really sit down and think about that. We had time to think about whether to go after one. And it was nice because it gave Sarah and I time to talk and get her input,
Mhm.
which was nice. And it made us more efficient out on the course because I didn't have to, sort of negotiate some of these points later. I had her feedback, we had a plan, and that helped us be a little bit more efficient. So little pro tip there, if you get
Smart.
Stephanie, it's funny you say that because my teammate and I went to Miguel's the night before and they had like maps there on a shelf somewhere, and I was looking at that the night before and I was like, heck yeah, like race hasn't started yet, I'm gonna look at this and study it. Get
Yeah,
like a visualization of the area.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would not have, that would not have crossed my mind,
Yeah.
yeah,
to be
that's a
honest.
great thing.
And I'll tell you what else. I know that the maps that Mark took, what I heard was he had made his own maps of the area with LiDAR. So he may have had a much better,
Idea.
map of that area to know where to cut up through. If he had LiDAR that really tells you what those
The
contour
real
lines.
contours, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, oh well.
There we go. That's,
So,
Did pretty well considering.
you
Yeah, so
obviously
if-
didn't need it.
just-
Still had an amazing race. So we hopped on bikes here, and let's talk about, so then the rest of the race, basically, after you did this monster trek, you got on your bikes and, you were biking this paved road down. And really the choice was, do you go to bike drop X or do you go to bike drop Y? So what you did was you got your bikes to here, and think of it like a transition area. It just wasn't manned. So they called it a bike drop. And so you would drop your bike here. And if you were going to bike drop X, then you went on foot to 11, 9, 10, 12, and then back on your bike. Bike drop Y had available 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So 5 foot points off of bike drop Y, 4 foot points off of bike drop X. And so you can see bike drop X is closer. It's going to be quicker to get to that bike drop, but you've only got 4 trekking points and they're more spread out. Bike drop Y, much further away. You've got 5 trekking points, and these 4 at least are much closer. So that was a sort of the crux decision. And for most teams, you only got to do one or the other. It really, for all except the top teams, you were going to do one or the other. So what was your all's thinking, Rachel, after you got the rest of your maps at the transition area with your bikes. What went into your decision to go to BDY?
Well, I think, to be honest, we hadn't even necessarily made the decision until we were like already on the bikes, right, Barb? I think we kind of talked about it a little bit
I
more.
remember seeing Stephanie and Sarah in transition. I said, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
and then,
Well,
and then when you flip to the second map is when we started counting Ks, and I was doing an estimate of our potential distances and time. And we really just wanted to go where we could get more points.
I think that's basically what that came down to. Was I counted 4 points at BDX, 5 points at BDY, and I thought, if
We have to go to
if
BDY.
we have a chance, we've got to get the one that has the 5 points, because it's probably going to be difficult to go to both, or at least go to both and get multiple points. So I could tell that 17 was going to be kind of an iffy, just because it was a little bit further away from the other 4. But I could also tell kind of that there looked to be a fairly easy route choice around it, because you just kind of had that reentrant in the middle and then the trail. And so I was like, okay, it's probably not terrible. I didn't honestly spend a ton of time looking at the checkpoint locations at BDX, other than I saw that 9 was like way far north and probably was going to be out of the question for sure. But, really looking at it, you can tell the elevation that is required to get all 4 of those, because like each of them are on the top of a ridge.
Mhm.
And not the same ridge.
Yeah. Right.
So it's we'd heard from the teams afterwards that got these 4 points that it was a lot of climb and took a long time. So I think that was part of what made BDY the better choice. But I can't honestly say that I like looked and said, oh, that's definitely a lot of climb. I think our choice really came down to the fact that we knew we could get 5 points at BDY versus BDX. And honestly, once we were biking and a lot of the biking appeared to be really flat, my thought had been that, oh, well, the biking won't be that bad because it's mostly flat. I did not know, as maybe Barb did with previous area knowledge, that road would turn into a freaking Jeep trail muddy mess thing.
Oh God. Finally got my jersey clean.
I had to do the extra rinse cycle on the washing machine to get all of the mud out of my pants. It was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was basically our rationale as well, Rachel. It was, there are 5 points here, there are only 4 points here, and ultimately, 1 point is what separates you from another team. So that's what we did as well. I had sort of looked at this and seeing where these points were located, just thought, man, there is no good way. Like, how are you going to get from 9 to 10?
Yeah.
You have to climb up over the saddle. You may get clipped out. Like, this just looked uninviting.
Right.
And we had a special present at 17 that there was a trail practically to the spur just south of where we dropped our bikes. And
Well, that reentrant, you see the
Yeah.
reentrant, the big main reentrant,
had a trail all the way up.
had a
there.
trail almost all the way up to basically the tip of the spur there, that goes up to 14. So that made that much faster too. So
Yeah, nice. Nice.
but yeah, I mean, that was kind of the nice part about that trek, was you had the little Jeep, the little trail, from 13 to, and we took it back over to 14 and then just cut down and back up to 15 and then cut up to the trail to 16 and then 16. And so, I mean, it really wasn't like very hard nav. And so at 16 is kind of where we decided, yes, we have time for sure to get 17. We kind of had to watch the clock. Barb had timed how long it took us to get to the bike drop from the start finish, so that we knew how much time we needed to allow ourselves to get back. Because of the obviously the cutoff, we didn't want to miss that. So
Yeah, let me just interject right there, Rachel. That's a really important point. learning point. So you'll note that when we biked from the TA to get over to the BDs, to the bike drops, we go right past the start finish. And so what Rachel's saying, and we did the same, I imagine most people did, but we were really careful to watch our clock and see how long it took us to bike down to this point. We looked at our watch here at the end of Indian Creek Road, thinking that if we had time to go get BDX, we would want to know exactly how long it was going to take us to get from this intersection back to the finish. So, you know, we were making mental notes of our time from here to here and from here to here so that we could better plan our return and know when we needed to be out of there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that said, we'd kind of given ourselves like we need to get back to our bikes at BDY by, I think we said 5:15. The race cutoff was at 7. We ended up getting back to our bikes and on them at 4:45. So we had plenty of extra time. And from what I could tell, I did not see an immediate good route between BDY to BDX, like going across. And plus we weren't totally sure on our time. So we just basically said, we're just going to go straight back towards the finish, you know, the way that we came. So we went all the way back down. And then at that intersection up to BDX, we knew we had time to go get BDX, so that we just got the checkpoint at BDX. We didn't get any of the trekking points. And that was cutting it, felt like to me, very close. I don't like to cut things close. But that was what we ultimately ended up having time to do. We did, you know, in some of the post-race discussions, we've talked about some of the routes that other teams took between BDY and BDX, which included coming down and taking a single track trail.
Powder Mill. Yeah.
Powder Mill Trail, that
Yeah.
one. Yep. So some teams attempted that, and then some teams attempted the bike whack between, the Inn and Daniel Boone and that reentrant there, which apparently was terrible. So I think we kind of lucked out by not even bothering to try any of those.
Yeah, I knew from experience that Powder Mill Branch would be super slow, so I never gave that any serious consideration. I had scouted this many years ago from the end of Indian Creek Road, and when I had been out there, this was so over. There used to be a trail there. The old maps show a trail along this, and obviously it's along a creek, so you didn't have to worry about getting clipped out, right? So, you know, you were going to be able to get through there. But when I had scouted that years ago, this was super thick and ugly. And so that's why, because I had wanted to try to hook that together and make a loop, you know, for the race many years ago, but it was nasty. But I told Sarah, you know, this is clear now. There's a cabin back here, so this is probably good. It's really only this. And I guarantee you, Latanzi's team and some other teams have busted through there. So maybe it won't be too bad. Maybe it'll be clear. So when we left BDY, or when we headed to BDY, our plan was to return by that route, to go back, because it had taken us 2 hours to get from the start finish out to BDY, riding this way on Spas Creek Road, because you're going upstream and uphill all the way out here. So it had taken us 2 hours. And our thought was we certainly would be, you know, faster than that going this other way. Well, then fortunately we saw Eric and Teresa at BDY, and he told us that they had come out that way from X and told us how bad it was. He said it's still a mess and it had taken them a long, long time. And that's when we said, okay, well, we've got to just go back out Spas Creek Road. And we didn't have time. We were cutting it close even without going out to get X. That had been our intent. If we had had time, we would have done the same, you know, out and back to X, but we didn't have time to do it. So it was kind of a bummer to have to backtrack and basically wind our way back without getting any more points. But it sounds like that was the better way. And it only took us an hour going.
Yeah, it was much faster going the other way.
Cross Creek Road. Yeah. So that wasn't bad. Okay.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess that's kind of it. And people have questions or anything. I don't know that unless Barb wants to add some more.
One couple of things I wanted to add about actually something that I learned at a different level with Rachel. Well, first I want to go back to the timing thing is really, really important, and distance. And because I was logging distance and time just to keep a sense of things. And when we hit that intersection, we calculated how much time we wanted to leave as a buffer, which was 15 minutes. And so we literally gave ourselves a time deadline that if we didn't get to BDX, then we were calling it. And and some of you may recall, there was that big tree that was down, and there was a line to cross through it on either side. And Rachel immediately, like, it just without even thinking about it, busted down to the creek. And I was like, okay, we're going to the and
Yeah,
here
I'm
we
not waiting.
down the creek and up and back and out. And I was like, that was brilliant. And then just her constant sense of urgency. I mean, it was admirable, and it actually lit a fire under me that I was like, wait a minute, I could really be a lot faster if I just like not only trained on bike, did more with footwork and things like that. So because I mean, we were really moving. And I thought, dang, that was really awesome. So, you know, the idea, like, we kind of have this idea of 12 hours, you know, we have time and this and that, but moving with purpose and urgency, and just every motion has a purpose, was something that, you know, was really ingrained in me in this race. So thank you, Rachel, for those pro tips. And well, it happened also when we became accidental partners, well, not accidental, like
Last minute.
we at the last minute, we both realized we were solo, and we said, hey, let's go together. So that was great. So that's all I wanted to add to the discussion. So if there are any questions.
And Barb towed me around on the bike. Well, didn't actually tow me, but I was in her draft.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah,
of the bike.
That made it even better to be on the road, so that she could just tuck in and I could go. So
yeah. So had you all talked about towing at all before? Because you all had never teamed up before, right? So had you all talked
Yeah.
about towing and how that would look?
So I lost my tow rope, my nice little bungee foot tow that I have at Nationals. Left it on the canoe. We'd used it to tow our boat, tow the kayak, the solo kayak, our canoe tandem kayak we towed, and we forgot it. So I need a new one. Haven't remembered to make one. So I don't actually even have any tows right now. So we did not talk about towing.
well, I didn't even think to bring one, because I've always known Rachel as like just amazing. So I was like, I'm not even gonna bring it up. So but it worked for you just tucking in my draft. I mean, that was all.
Yeah.
It was no big deal. And I mean, because it was so windy that it just helped that I could block the wind and keep us going. And we just made time.
It was very windy.
What did your all's conversation look like before this race? So there are a lot of women. I've already read some of the survey responses, and several women have commented on one of the things that we can do to help them is help them find teammates. And now you all, you know, found each other, you know, each other through racing and that sort of thing. But can you talk a little bit about what your conversation was like in terms of, okay, if we're going to race together, you know, what are our goals going to be? Did you all, you know, talk about sort of what your expectations were and your goals and things like that?
No,
Uh,
a little bit.
I've been playing the coming back from surgery card pretty much
Right.
all year long. So I, you know, yeah, when we talked about it, it was kind of like, hey, let's just do this. You know, it's going to be fun. Like, no pressure. Like, we didn't have like goals. Like, our goal was to have fun. Like, we didn't really, I think that's what we talked about, right, Barb? I don't think that
I
we
mean, I
really-
think we texted and just said, yeah, let's go out there and do the best we know how. And
oh yeah, because then I cracked a rib. And I see,
yeah, oh yeah, that's right.
I see Kelly's
Cracked
on
your
here. I was riding with Kelly, and we crashed, and on Sunday, the Sunday before the race, and I had a cracked rib, and I texted Barb, and I was like, I can at least run. Like, so that kind of made I think that lowered our expectations as it was anyway. So But yeah, I know it's an important thing, especially with new teammates, to kind of talk through what your expectations are and whatnot. But Barb and I did, as she said, we'd done a 12-hour row gain essentially together earlier this year, and I think we're pretty familiar with each other just from, you know, the number of races we've done around each other. So yeah, I mean, I really just kind of had the thought of, you know, let's have some fun and see what happens. So
It wasn't your goal to be top 5 overall. You just
no.
did
No.
it anyway.
Thanks.
It's kind of blown away. I mean, it was cool, right?
Yeah, I really had, I didn't know. I mean, I just, like I said, just kind of wanted to, you know, get through it and have fun and just enjoy the day. I mean, that's the best part about adventure racing, is just being outside and enjoying
Oh, I just saw
nature.
come across from Morgan, and it says, sounds like your knowledge of this terrain helped with route choice. How often do you ladies scout? I don't actually scout, and I've been in this area for a couple of figs, 2 specifically that use these the Western map, and then and also have a friend that has a cabin in the area, surprisingly from Michigan. And so I know a little bit about it, but I'm not sure. Actually, the first estimate that Rachel had going to BDY was that we weren't going as far as we wound up going. And I thought, oh, good, we're gonna get to our section before the crap. And that's basically at Powder Mill. And then she's like, oh, it's a few more K. And I went, we're gonna be
After I flipped the map.
And then I said, we're gonna be riding through some junk, and that's just it. And but I mean, that's very reminder of some expedition racing I've done, and probably the same for Rachel. And we just thought we could get through it though. The other part that I thought was helpful, which kind of bombed out, was the when we went into that cliff wall. We had a little bit of caution, but we just said, well, this is a bold move, let's try it. And I'm really glad that we did. And but I would say
Optimistic.
Yeah, we were very optimistic, but there wasn't anything else in terms of race prep. I questioned how this time of year, how much water we would see that we would actually want to filter. And so once when we started, we had a good chunk of water. We left some water at the bike, and that was just it. I mean, oh no, we did treat a little bit of water. Did we even treat water?
No, we never did.
No, we didn't treat water. That's right. And
I finished very dehydrated.
yeah, I know it was, I mean, and we were moving, and it's hard when you have a bike, foot, and that's it. I mean, there's just no letting off the gas. And yeah,
I was out of water. I think I had to ask Barb for a drink of her water bottle on the bike.
And then
Stopped at the start finish again. On our way back through, we stopped at the start finish to refill my hydration bladder, because I was just carrying a 2-liter bladder, which I went through on the trek. And then I tried to drain it, knowing that we would stop, and refilled my bladder at the start finish. I was surprised at how much water I went through.
Yeah, it was hot.
Well, another thing about this kind of terrain, I call it spur gully, is that when you're up high, it's not uncommon that there's going to be at least a game trail or an old ride or an old 2-track or something. So in Rachel, because she's a pro, knew that too. So we would try and stay high when we could, because usually it was easier travel on top of a ridgeline than but that bonus trail, I mean, is just like a gift from the heavens that we got out of 17. I think that helped us have more time. But
one of the things I want to point out on the map, you talked about where you thought we were going to get lucky and not have to go beyond where it gets crappy on Spas Creek Road. And I want to point out for people, because it's a really subtle change on the map, but it's something to look for. One of the things that I had told Sarah is, you know, we might get lucky. People that go out to BDX first, go out Indian Creek. This is a beautiful gravel road. It's super fast. The gravel's in good shape.
Do
It's,
you need to share the map again?
oh, I'm not sharing right now. Yeah,
No,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you can, I've got it on my second screen, but I can't scroll in much more.
Yeah. So going out to BDX, this is a fast ride out to BDX. And I said, you know, Sarah, we might get lucky in that people who go out to BDX and get those points first, if they think that this road is going to be the same fast riding, then they could get out here and get partway down Spas Creek Road and realize they don't have time to do any of this and get turned around on Spas Creek Road and go back. On the other hand, maybe we get lucky and people who come out and do Spas Creek Road and realize how slow it is, just bypass Indian Creek and don't try to do this if they think that this could potentially look like this. So I kind of was hopeful that maybe our knowledge of what these two different roads look like could serve us well. I think in the end, most people didn't have time to even think about doing the second one anyway. But so it didn't make a difference. But I realized that actually the map does give you a little bit of a hint. If you notice, Spas Creek Road right here, see how it's black, white dashed and they're kind of even right here. And then after you cross the county line, it gets to be these long white with the little black dash. That's basically telling you that the road right here is less improved. It's unimproved compared to this, right? That like the heavier the feature, so the longer the black line of this feature, the more prominent the feature is. And so that's one little clue that you might have been able to pick up on, that this part of the road was not going to be as developed, as good a road as this part. So it's a little detail, but something to look for.
I wondered about that when I saw that, and I didn't know that they did that. And I'm really glad you pointed now. I
think it's a good detail, but I think I have also seen so many maps with absolute like no relation to reality anymore, you know, like just everything's so old on the map or anything. Like I kind of, everything that I see on a map like that, I take with a grain of salt. I was just kind of like, as we were riding, was like, oh, it's still gravel. This is wonderful. And then like, oh, it's turning into Jeep road, but hopefully it stays like this and doesn't get worse, you know, but it just, yeah, it's a good point on the map that it does actually reflect that.
Yeah, I had not actually really, if I had noticed that before, I hadn't given it a lot of thought or paid much attention to it. And it was just kind of, you know, I knew what Spas Creek Road looked like, but I had not really appreciated that they actually do have that change in the symbol set. But yeah, it still doesn't quite prepare you for what goes on up here.
I saw a question, but I just want to point out something else. When we were, I think Rachel was asking the RDs what route they thought people would be taking, and they really thought people would take Powder Mill. Oh, excuse me. They really thought people would take Powder Mill, and Matt Mitchell took it, and then he compared his biking with ours, and he said we were 20 minutes faster. He sent me a text this week saying, I mean, I told him I was too fragile for Powder Mill, but
nerd alert.
Yeah, he had total nerd alert. I love Matt Mitchell. I love that guy.
So did he take Powder Mill going west, or did he take it going east?
He took it going west.
Yeah. Well,
so they did X first, and then they went over to Y and got a couple there. I mean, The other reason why I like to just go to one and fully complete it is just transition time. And even if we're just dropping in, putting on shoes, I did this in the nationals and it caused us to jump up a few places. We cleared one of the O sections simply because I didn't want to take our team through another transition and wanted to, it's just a time suck. Whereas when we got X, I just biked up, dropped my bike, ran up, punched it, and Rachel got my bike off the ground and turned it around, and I was able to hop on it. And we finished with 15 minutes to spare exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
that's a really good point. So do you both wear clips? Do you both wear bike shoes, bike specific shoes?
I clip in, yeah.
I mean, it has to be a really short race with lots of transitions for me to want to go flats.
Yeah, same here. I can't imagine riding back Spas Creek Road down some of that rocky stuff, not clipped in. I wreck enough without coming off. my
Barb did.
Oh my gosh, I would. All right, so anybody who did Spas Creek Road, you'll appreciate it. I mean, there was just a bunch of really, really big puddles, and Rachel and I were riding pretty well, bombing down the hill, having a good time. And I hit a really muddy skinny, and it was like enough that I would maybe went a half inch off my line, and I just slid straight into the puddle. It smelled terrible. And I mean, and like I couldn't wipe off my watch. I couldn't wipe off my bike computer. And I'm like, well, I'm glad we know what we're doing anyway, because until we get going fast, none of this is going to dry. But it dried by the time we got to the critical intersection, so that we got there at 5:50, and we gave ourselves 22.5 minutes to get back there. And then we gave ourselves 15 minutes to get from that intersection back home. So, and that worked out. But I saw a question about
Food, yeah.
Yeah, for 12 hours.
Um,
We didn't eat
I
hardly.
didn't eat enough. I actually had put some food from the TA1 into my pack, which I hate doing. I always have my food in my side pockets so that I have it accessible. And because of this, I didn't get into my pack to get my extra food. So I finished without any accessible food in my side pockets, which is not typical for me. I usually finish with more food than I need, or I take more food than I end up needing during the race. But my rule of thumb is usually like 1 item per hour. I don't really pay too much attention to calories, like unless it's like fruit snacks, which are only 80 calories a pack. I'll count 2 of those for an hour. But yeah, if I take enough, items, whether it's a bar, goo, or whatever, then I count 1 for, so 12 items essentially kind of is what my rule of thumb is. But I did have some macro bars on this one, which are like 280 calories, so quite a bit of calories. But I'm glad I did, because those were the things that I had accessible, and I think that's why I was okay at the end of the race. But yeah, that's kind of my rule of thumb. I don't know, Barb, if you have any difference, but
And for me, I tend to I try to go for like an 800 calorie breakfast, just to get me through the first couple hours. Because it was warm, I had 2 scratch bottles prepped, and then I was literally grazing, because it was just whatever I could just get in my mouth when I could, and then just let it be. And then on the bike is when I'm much more successful eating. So my top 2 bag is always filled with, I have a Ziploc with just snacks in it, like Oreo cookies, sesame sticks, M&Ms, Chewies, which are like those electrolyte chews, just whatever I feel like, putting pretzels, pretzel nuggets. And then on the track, I sadly, when I was emptying my pack, I was like, I didn't eat hardly anything. But I mean, I was fine though. I mean, I did have in TA, there's this product, it's expensive, but boy, it goes a long way for me, is the Spring Wolf Energy packs. It's 350 calories of all good things, and you can just literally squeeze it into your mouth, and it's good for 2 hours, and It tastes
Mm.
good no matter what. It's always good on my stomach. And I think I also had a UCAN bar, which is again super reliable for my stomach. I didn't have any stomach problems, but I never wanted to roll that dice. So
How do you get an 800-calorie breakfast that early in the morning? Is it all cold stuff? Like that's
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
I'm
you had
like,
like oatmeal, and what did you have?
I had my overnight steel cut oats and I mix it with I take a canning jar and I put water and protein powder, no, almond milk, protein powder, dried berries, and then more granola on top of it to give it a little bit of crunch. And then I had a monk pack snickerdoodle, and then I had a banana.
So I
Maybe-
forgot breakfast, and got to the lodge very late, and so my breakfast was a banana and like a Laura bar, but it worked. So
Yeah, I mean, I always bring overnight oats, a banana, and a monk pack cookie. And then as soon as I wake up, I'm just starting to eat until about an hour before. It's a huge priority just to start eating.
it is a really good idea to do that, because then you really don't, because especially the beginning of races is always kind of a mad rush for an hour at least. So it's always good to have a good base of food before you go into a race. I've been in a lot of races where we're riding a bus for a couple hours prior to the start, and like you look around and people are just stuffing their faces. So it's always a good strategy.
Do you all drink just water, or do you get some calories through your fluids as well? I know Barb said she had some scratch bottles.
I actually had scratch in my bike bottles. Yeah,
So
I don't
how many calories are in
typically,
scratch?
but I only had one scoop in my bottles, and I think that's only like 90 calories. So I didn't have a lot, but
I mean, I think mine were like 120. I think I had a scoop and a half maybe, and something like that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so.
So not as good as Mountain Dew.
For an
yeah.
American handler, it's not as good as Mountain.
Which is my preferred liquid calories in the race.
I didn't know you were one of those too. Well, and I also have this thing about matching what I'm drinking with what I'm eating, because I can't have scratch in an Oreo. It just doesn't work. And so I have like, usually I drink the scratch and eat it
I
with
don't have that problem.
my kids.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't know there was anything that didn't go with Oreos.
I know, right?
I'm very picky, very picky. I mean, when I dumped in I only tried to pick out the stuff that didn't completely soak through in the puddle to eat.
Yeah.
At the end, I gave Rachel the sealed bag of Oreos.
Yeah, it was not wet. Well, that's any other questions or?
Yeah.
No, good. So we're right at an hour. That's excellent. I'm going to stop recording right after I say, thanks so much, Rachel, Barb. We really appreciate your time.